The Harry Potter franchise is one of my favorite franchises of all time. I've been watching these movies every single year during Christmas since I was a little boy. It's a tradition in my family for some reason to watch these movies every single year during Christmas. And this year, I decided to rank these movies. I've never read any Harry Potter book in my life. I've only watched the movies, so I won't be talking about how well adapted the movies are. Someday I'll read them, I promise. But for now, I'm sticking with the movies. And on that note, hi everyone, I hope y'all are doing fine. So today's video is probably going to be my biggest video of all time yet. So if you stick with me throughout this entire ranking, I will appreciate it a lot. Also, I decided to not dive too deep into these movies, because it would make this video too long and boring at times. That's a mistake that I've made with my Toy Story and Shrek ranking in the past. But hey, in my defense, I'm still learning as a content creator. And now, enough yapping said, let's start this video by going over the first Harry Potter movie of the saga, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, also known as Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, is the cinematic introduction to the wizarding world of Harry Potter, released in 2001 and directed by Chris Columbus. This movie earned almost $1 billion at the box office, which is pretty good. Now, what did I think of this movie? Well, I think this movie is fun. It's a bit goofy at times with its ancient special effects and the kids acting.
I'll fight you!
But I think it's an overall fun movie. I can't really say though that I found the story outstanding. The mystery surrounding the Philosopher's Stone wasn't my favorite part of the movie. Throughout the entire runtime of the movie, we get introduced to the wizarding world, and I think this is the aspect of the movie that took the most amount of screen time. We learned who Harry Potter is and how he has been living since the tragic death of his parents. We learned a bit about the mystery surrounding his character, and then we discovered what Hogwarts is. But the main storyline about the Philosopher's Stone wasn't the center of the movie to me. The movie might be called this way, but I don't think this plotline had enough screen time to say that it was the heart of the movie. I found this plotline to be hidden too deep throughout the scenes and a bit too simple at times, especially with the challenges at the end of the movie. Also, chat, am I the only one who never understood why our trio never went around the chess game at the end of the movie? Like, why did they have to go through it? Anyways, like I said, the story is the weakest aspect of the movie for me, and generally it's the main reason why I watch movies. So this part of the movie disappoints me a bit. I also found the pacing of this movie a tiny bit too slow, but I don't think it impacts the movie enough to make a big deal out of it. Now, what about the characters? Well, I think the introduction to the characters of this movie was great and served its purpose enough for everyone. Well, Professor Quirrell could have had more scenes to make us, the viewers, more intrigued by him and make the plot twist of this movie more impactful at the end. But overall, I think the characters of this movie all had enough place in the story. They were all very different from one another too, which adds to the variety of characters aspect of this movie, which is something that I like too about it. Now, one aspect of this movie that I consider to be perfect is the soundtrack. Composer John Williams did an amazing job on this movie, and the music of this movie specifically became the most memorable for me throughout the entire saga. There's a reason why I consider him to be my favorite composer of all time. If you look at his discography, you can see all of the movies that he has worked on, which are some of the most memorable soundtracks of all time for me. This movie's soundtrack makes me emotional at times for some reason, and I think the emotional aspect of this soundtrack is what makes it special for me. And so, overall, I think Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is a fun introduction to the world of Harry Potter. Its story is a bit weak, but the rest of the movie is pretty fun, so I'll give this movie a rating of 7 out of 10. Now, let's move on to the next movie of this franchise, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is a movie that follows Harry Potter during his second year at Hogwarts. The movie was released in 2000 2002, 1 year after its predecessor, and it was also directed by Chris Columbus. It earned around $878 million at the box office, which is a bit less than its predecessor, but still very good. Now, what did I think of this movie? Well, I think this movie improved from its predecessor in terms of storytelling. This time around, it was less about introducing the world of Harry Potter, but more about adding to it and making the story the heart of the movie. And so, I found the mystery surrounding the Chamber of Secrets more intriguing than the mystery of the first movie, and it also takes a bigger part in the runtime of the movie. I think this storyline is really intelligent and fun to discover, with all the little details left for the viewer to theorize on. The solving is also pretty satisfying, leading to an intense climax with the basilisk. And so story-wise, I think this movie improved from its predecessor. But character-wise, I wouldn't say the same. Now, Harry's character growth was great. I will not complain about it. But there are some characters that I feel had holes in their story and purpose. My biggest example here would be Tom Marvolo Riddle, aka Lord Voldemort. The concept of him being a souvenir of some sort was a bit too complex and explained so fast. Like, he's supposed to revive Lord Voldemort. But how? Well, we have to wait for like 4 or 5 movies to find out how, which I find a bit disappointing. But I also like that it connects the movies more with each other. Also, I find the plot surrounding Ginny's character a bit empty. You see, she's there at the beginning and the end of the movie, but she was absent during the rest of the movie. I guess it makes sense because of what Tom made her do, but I think seeing her more would have made this plot twist more impactful for the viewer. Because honestly, I'm pretty sure there are some people out there that forgot she even existed until they saw her in the Chamber of Secrets. Now, the concept of Ron having a broken wand was really fun and well used in the story, especially at the end with Gilderoy Lockhart. And then there's the mystery surrounding Draco's character. Is he the heir of Slytherin? I like how it added intrigues to the plot of the movie, even if the answer was pretty obvious. Now, Gilderoy Lockhart's character was honestly a bit too cartoonish for me. Like, he is obviously a fraud from all the things he did wrong, like removing Harry's bones from his arm. And he somehow was hired to be a teacher at Hogwarts. Like, what was going on through Dumbledore's mind then? Anyways, it made his character not really believable for me. Dobby was also missing throughout most of the movie, even if he was the one causing trouble at times. But I guess it makes sense, just like with Ginny's character, because of his purpose. And finally, the soundtrack of this movie is still a banger. John Williams never disappoints. And the VFX is also improved from the previous movie. And so, overall, I think Harry Potter in the Chamber of Secrets is a fun movie with an intriguing mystery to solve, even if some characters missed a bit of engagement with the story. Anyways, I will give this movie a rating of 7.5 out of 10. Now let's move on to the movie that seriously changed the tone of the Harry Potter franchise forever. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. So, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is a movie that follows Harry Potter during his 3rd year at Hogwarts. The movie was released in 2004, 2 years after its predecessor, and was directed by another director, Alfonso Cuarón. I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name. Chris Columbus did not direct Prisoner of Azkaban because he was emotionally and physically exhausted from directing the first 2 films and wanted to spend more time with his family, which is honestly a respectable decision. The movie grossed almost $800 million at the box office, which is less than what the previous movies earned. Also, actor Richard Harris, portraying Albus Dumbledore in the first 2 Harry Potter movies, passed away shortly after filming Harry Potter in the Chamber of Secrets, so his role was taken over by his great friend Michael Gambon. And so, what did I think of this 3rd Harry Potter movie? Well, I found this movie's story to be really good and brilliant. The plot twist of Sirius actually being a good guy is honestly my favorite plot twist of the entire franchise. The build up to it was really intriguing and stressful to follow. Then there is the time travel plotline, which is also really good in my opinion and brings something really special to this movie. I really like to rewatch this movie to see all the details that gave us hints to this plot, like Hermione's sudden appearances in classes,
When did she come in? Did you see her come in?
or the various actions taken by her and Harry when they went back in time. This movie in general is really captivating story-wise and well-paced too, so it's really fun to watch it and discover it for the first time. This movie also brought a darker tone to the franchise, a tone that would be used in the future movies too. I think this sudden switch with the tone is a bit too direct, but I appreciate it, and it shows that the deeper we go in Harry Potter's story, the darker it becomes. And I really like this concept that this movie started. Harry's character arc was also really well made, starting off as being the target of the mentors, to believing that his dad saved him from them, to actually realizing that he's the one that saved himself from the Dementors. That I find to be a really nice evolution, showing a growth with his character's abilities. Then there are the new characters that all have some kind of importance to the story, and they all had some kind of twist with their character, which made the story stronger to me. Remus being a werewolf, Peter being Ron's rat during his entire life, Sirius being Harry's godfather. These are details that made the story stronger to me and solidified the relationships between the characters. Now, when it comes to the already existing characters, I don't think they necessarily had as much importance as usual, but honestly, I don't mind it, because the movie gave them enough screen time so we wouldn't forget about them, and also used them when needed. Now again, I really need to mention John Williams' work on the soundtrack, because it is really good as usual, and it's sadly the last Harry Potter movie that he has been working on. Why? Well, it was due to scheduling conflicts with other major film projects. But hey, at least we had the chance to hear his majestic music in 3 Harry Potter movies, which is not bad at all. And so overall, I really like this Harry Potter movie, and I would give it a 9 out of 10. Now let's move on to a movie that follows a very much calm Albus Dumbledore. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is a movie that follows Harry during his 4th year at Hogwarts. The movie was released in 2005, 1 year after its predecessor, and was directed by Mike Newell. Alfonso didn't come back to direct this one, because he was only intended to direct a single movie from the start, which was Prisoner of Azkaban. The movie grossed almost $900 million, which is better than its 2 predecessors, but not as good as the first movie. And so, what did I think of this movie? I really like the concept of the Triwizard Tournament. I think it made for a solid environment for the story to develop on. I really like this movie's mystery, with Harry somehow being a participant in this tournament. The movie giving us hints at many possible reasons and causes for this happening solidified the story for me. The 3 dangerous tasks were honestly fun to discover, and I really enjoyed that the story developed while the tournament went on. Like I said, it makes for a pretty solid and fun environment to develop the story on. The plot twist of Moody actually being Barty Crouch Jr. is honestly really good.
Boy, if you don't get...
The movie gave us subtle hints throughout the events of the story, and watching this movie a second time makes you realize all these details, and I find it so brilliant. The climax of the movie with Harry being reunited with Voldemort was honestly such an intense scene. The tone was so dark. Peter cutting off his hand and taking bits of Harry's blood was hard to watch, but I somehow love it. Cedric Diggory's death was so tragic, and when his corpse was brought back to Hogwarts, it was such an emotional scene that worked for me. In general, I really liked the setup for this movie, and Harry's journey through it was really captivating. Now let's talk about the characters of this movie. Cedric is honestly so slept on for me. He has an important role in the story, but his character was mostly in the background. I think if the movie would have put him more on the spotlight, his death would have been more impactful. Not that it was not impactful at all, don't get me wrong. It was still pretty impactful and emotional, because it demonstrated how horrible Voldemort and the Death Eaters are. But I wish he would have been given more screen time that would have solidified his importance in the story. Now, when it comes to the students from the other schools, I find them so stereotyped. I mean, it makes them more different from the other schools, but still, I think they represented too much a specific gender stereotype. With with the strong northern man and the beautiful French woman. Anyways, it's not necessarily a big deal for me. I would just have preferred these schools to be more diversified, because it would have solidified the variety of characters as aspect of this movie for me. Harry's journey through the tournament was pretty fun to watch. It demonstrated that he is a young, courageous wizard. Neville also started to have more importance to the franchise in this one, which is a W moment for Neville. I think it was nice to see Harry and Ron's relationship being challenged. It helped them to strengthen their trust in each other. Hermione and Ron's relationship, on the other hand, was so annoying to me. Ron was obviously jealous of Hermione having some sort of romance with Krum.
No, absolutely not. Shut your fucking mouth!
And him just acting like a selfish moron was a tough watch for me. It made some scenes a bit cringe in my opinion, but overall, I like that some of the relationships between the characters were challenged in this movie. And finally, the soundtrack, even if it wasn't composed by John Williams, still had a couple of bangers. The job was given to Patrick Doyle, who did a nice job, not gonna lie, even if it wasn't as memorable as John's work. Yeah, the John Williams glaze will never stop. And so overall, I think this Harry Potter movie was really fun with an intense climax and a nice final plot twist. I find this movie to be really memorable, and the concept of the Triwizard Tournament was pretty fun and original. And so I will give this movie a rating of 9 out of 10. Now let's move on to a movie that introduced a more detestable villain than Lord Voldemort himself. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. So, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is a movie that follows Harry Potter during his 5th year at Hogwarts. The movie was released in 2007, 2 years after its predecessor. The movie was directed by David Yates. Mike Newell declined the offer of directing this 5th movie because he wanted to move on to other projects. The Order of the Phoenix grossed around $951 million, which almost surpassed the first movie's rollout. And so, what did I think of this movie? Well, honestly, I find this movie great and weird at the same time. Let me explain. I find the concept of students creating a secret association to learn how to fight Voldemort's army really good. I also find Dolores Umbridge to be a great villain. Somehow, I find her even more dislikable than Voldemort himself, which tells us how far she went, if you would ask me. The way she wanted to have control over everything and everyone was so frustrating, but well made. Her actress, Imelda Staunton, did an amazing job here. Some scenes of the movie were also pretty memorable for me, like Voldemort and Dumbledore's duel at the end. The relationship between Harry and Sirius was also pretty well developed and built up to an emotional ending. I have complained many times during the previous movies about the lack of character usage, but here, with Sirius, I think it actually makes sense. The times we saw him were used to solidify his relationship with Harry, and we couldn't see him more because he was a wanted man. So it makes sense to not have too many scenes with him, and they were still able to develop a strong relationship with his character. So I am congratulating them on that. But now, on another note, I feel like this movie has just a weird aura, let's say. It's really hard to describe the feeling that I have when watching this movie, but I'm gonna try to give you guys some example of what I mean. Like, first of all, I get that the deeper we go into the Harry Potter movies, the darker it gets, but this movie just looks so great. It misses a lot of colors at times for me. It's not that big of a problem for me, but my eyes would have preferred it if it was more saturated. Also, I find some of the students' attitudes weird. I feel like we're missing a lot of emotions with them. I feel like most of them had no visual expressions most of the time, except for like Harry. And then there are the sets, which for some reason feel more fake in this movie than ever before. Even more fake than in the first movie. I don't know if the budget for the special effects were shortened, because it clearly looks like many green screens were used. But I just feel like this movie didn't put a lot of effort into making some of its sets believable. unbelievable, like the Department of Mysteries and the Wooden Bridge. Also, Cornelius Fudge's character was so unbelievable for me. I get it, he's paranoid and in denial, but I think his character just overdoes it. There could have been many ways used to help his situation get better, but none were taken, and it left the environment of the movie in a weird state. Like, the concept itself is nice, but I think it was a bit unbelievable in practical terms. Now let's go back to a more positive note. Luna is a really likable character. I love her so much. Sirius Black's death was pretty emotional and heartbreaking for so many reasons. Whether it's because he got killed by his cousin, or because he got killed right in front of Harry, or because he was the last family Harry had. I think his death was impactful enough, even if they overdid it with his body going in the portal and all. The concept of Dumbledore not talking to Harry was pretty unique, and even though it was frustrating at times, it was a refreshing concept. And Dolores's downfall was so satisfying. She was such a great villain in my opinion. And when the owls were disturbed by the Weasley twins, or when she got kidnapped by the centaurs, I was really satisfied by these scenes, which demonstrates the impact her character had on the story and on the viewers. And finally, we cannot talk about a Harry Potter movie without mentioning its score. This movie's soundtrack was composed by Nicholas Hooper, taking over from Patrick Dole's job. It's pretty common for directors to work with the same composers on multiple projects, which is why David Yates chose Hooper, a composer that he trusts for this movie. And so, overall, I find this movie a bit weird in terms of feeling, but it has nice concepts and some memorable characters and scenes, so I will give this movie a rating of 7 out of 10. It might feel like I've said many bad things about this one and still gave it an acceptable note, but in my defense, I still had fun watching it. Now let's move on to the movie that I believe is the most divisive within the Potterheads community: Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. So, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince is a movie that follows Harry during his 6th year at Hogwarts. The movie was released in 2009, 2 years after its predecessor. David Yates is back as the director of this movie, with Nicholas Hooper also coming back as the composer of it. This 6th installment grossed around $933 million at the box office. And so, what did I think of this movie? Well, I know that this one is pretty divisive within the Harry Potter community, and personally, I'm gonna have to say that I think this is one of the weakest Harry Potter movies. Doesn't mean that I don't like it. I just feel like, in general, this is one of the weakest movies of the franchise. And what makes me say that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me start off by saying that I actually like the story of this movie. It actually gives Draco a bigger role in the franchise, and his relationship with Snape in this one is pretty strong and adds a lot of complexity to the story. Harry's relationship with Dumbledore is also pretty strong in this movie, and it builds up to an emotional ending for Harry and Dumbledore's character. I think what makes this story so good for me are the relationships between the characters, whether it's romance or friendship. I also really like that we dive into Voldemort's past. It adds some background info on how he became who he now is, and it's especially shown through Horace's character. Horace's inclusion in the movie was pretty good if you would ask me. He was used as a link to Tom Riddle's past, and he also introduced us, the viewers, to the concepts of many potions used in the story. Now, I also really like Draco's usage in the story, demonstrating his struggle to live up to his family's reputation as Death Eaters. You see, I'm gonna be honest with you guys here. I don't like his character at all, but I have to admit that he's important to the plot for once. And his relationship with Snape was also really nice, adding a more complex moral for Snape's character. I think his character was hard to figure out, and this double game that he was playing is something that I enjoyed in this movie. Now, enough relationships between characters. Let me talk a bit about the build-up within the story. I think the concept of Draco trying to kill Dumbledore by cursing him or poisoning him is really cool and builds up pretty well during the events of the story. I like that there were subtle hints throughout the movie of this ultimate climax that you understand when rewatching the movie a second time. Also, Draco failing to curse or poison Dumbledore ultimately brought him to face the wise wizard. which led to an intense climax for the movie, and an emotional one too. The potions introduced by Horace were also nicely used within the story, whether it's the love potion or the liquid luck. And finally, I think the humor in this movie works well and is pretty funny if you would ask me. Now, with all that said, I also have some negative things to say about this movie, starting off with the romances. They are the cringiest parts of the movie for me, and I can't stand some of these scenes, especially the ones with Lavender. I think some of the actors' chemistry doesn't work really well on screen, and the biggest example for me is Harry and Ginny. My bad, chat, but I don't really believe that they have some sort of connection, because their actors don't look like they have some kind of chemistry together. I know that they're trying their best, but I don't feel like ultimately their acting worked on screen. The movie also misses a lot of colors visually. I feel like this movie is too gray and brown, and I don't really like this color grading. The movie's title also doesn't make sense to me. I feel like the Half-Blood Prince plotline wasn't developed enough, and yet the movie is titled after it. The only impact this plotline had on Harry was how obsessed he became over the Book of Potions, and even there I feel like they haven't developed enough on it. It ended when Ginny hid the book and came back when Snape told Harry that he actually is the Half-Blood Prince, which is a good plot twist on paper, but here I feel like it wasn't impactful enough in the story. And finally, I can't talk about this movie without talking about its music. Dumbledore's death song was so good and emotional. Hooper did an amazing job on this movie. And so, overall, what did I think of this movie? Well, I like its story in general and how strong the relationships between the characters are. It's an emotional movie, but feels a bit too cringe at times and kind of misses a lot of action sequences. The movie is not visually appealing, in my opinion, and I think it could have been better in terms of development for some of its plot lines. I will give this movie a rating of 6.5 out of 10. Now let's move on to the 7th movie of this franchise, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. So, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 is a movie that follows Harry in his journey of destroying Horcruxes. The movie was released in 2010, the year following its predecessor. David Yates is back again to direct this movie, but this time around, he brings along a new composer named Alexandre Desplat. This 7th installment grossed $960 million at the box office, which almost made it surpass the first movie's achievement. And so, what did I think of this movie? Well, I find this movie to be the most boring one of the franchise. Every franchise has that one episode or that one movie that you will hate the most, and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 is my black sheep of the Harry Potter saga. I feel like the 7th book being separated into 2 movies made sense, especially with the amount of lore to discuss, but I think they made this movie's pacing too slow, like if they wanted to slow things down and make an entire movie about establishing what's to come in the next part. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against this movie trying to establish the second part. I just believe that the execution wasn't that good. By trying to make a movie that establishes stuff, they made most of its runtime boring, stretched, and repetitive. I feel like this movie didn't use its runtime the best way it could, and was instead just an accumulation of ideas and moments. Now, I also believe that this movie toned down many scenes that should have been more impactful emotionally, like some of the characters' death. I don't mean that they didn't make it as sad as they could, but more that they didn't give them enough importance and just included the necessary elements to make them work at minimum. For example, Dobby was there in only 2 scenes, which gave us time to forget that he even existed before dying. He didn't get enough screen time or character development to make his death a full-on character arc. It was just an emotional scene, lacking character growth. This movie also introduced some important story arcs without mentioning them again until the next movie. I get that the point was to establish part 2, but when you make an entire movie about that, it can get boring. If you introduce arcs and hope that the audience will remember them in the next movie, so you decide to not remind the audience of their existence at some point in the movie, then I believe that you set yourself for potential failure. For example, they introduced Snape's importance in the story at the beginning of the movie, but we never see him again until the next movie. Like if the movie forgot about him or didn't care to expand his importance to continue his arc within this specific movie. You know, in my opinion, the whole debate about a part 1 being an introduction to a part 2 shouldn't excuse not making arcs within this first part and not giving them closure. My point of view on first part movies is that apart from being an introduction or an establishing movie, there are also whole ass movies with their own story and their own character journeys. So why should they not have some kind of closure? They can tease the next movies and have their own story at the same time, but the Deathly Hallows Part 1 is sadly only an introduction movie in my opinion. There are some memorable and fun scenes, I'll give it that, but they are moments, not arcs. They are fun to watch, but lack character growth again. These moments are also pretty rare, because most of the movie is trying to figure out stuff and not necessarily jump into the action. It's like if they kept all the fun scenes for the second part, and gave all of the yapping scenes to the first one. They spent like an entire movie on one single Horcrux, and destroyed the rest of them in the next movie. Again, don't get me wrong, I don't hate this movie for having too much dialogue and not enough action. I just think that they stretched these dialogue scenes, and I even believe that some scenes were awfully long. The environments were also pretty repetitive, which made me more bored with time. Usually, I hate movies that take place in forests, and this one is not an exception. I like to watch characters in different environments. It helps with the diversity aspect of a story, but here, I feel like they spent too much time in forests to make it boring. Now, I feel like I've said many negative things about this movie, so here's me mentioning a couple of things that I liked from it. Ron's journey was interesting. I liked it, even if Ron annoyed me. The Deathly Hallows story with its animation was really cool and unique. Dobby's death was pretty emotional, even if there were no real build-up to it throughout the entire movie or even saga. And the last Voldemort scene where he steals the Elder Wand is honestly pretty damn cool. Now, with all that said, here's my overall opinion about this movie. Its story lacked action, and the establishing scenes' pacing was too slow. This movie introduced storylines, but never developed more on some of them until the next movie. This movie did its job of introducing, but forgot that it's also a movie with its own arcs to develop and give closure to. The environments felt repetitive, the yapping sessions felt stretched, and overall, I feel like there are many uninteresting scenes that just make the movie longer. I will give this movie a rating of 4.5 out of 10. Now let's move on to the final movie of this franchise. The movie that concludes this whole journey. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. So, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 is a movie that also follows Harry in his journey of destroying Horcruxes. The movie was released in 2011, the year following its predecessor. David Yates is back again to direct this final movie with Alexandre Desplat back again as the composer for it. This 8th installment grossed $1.3 billion at the box office, which makes it the most profitable Harry Potter movie of all time, and the only one to surpass $1 billion at the box office. And so, what did I think of this movie? Well, I think this last Harry Potter movie is great and weird at the same time. On the one hand, you have some of the best Harry Potter scenes in it, with some of them being incredible plot twists and some of them being intense action sequences. But on the other hand, I feel like there are many confusing elements story-wise that either don't make sense or are just too vague. That whole thing with Harry somehow coming back to life and Dumbledore being too mysterious about the afterlife was so weird, for example, and still to this day, I don't understand any of it. But again, this movie is pretty memorable and entertaining, so it kind of compensates for some of the weird decisions taken story-wise. The pacing is great, the music is awesome, and the suspense alongside the tension feels good. There are many great elements in this movie that I appreciate a lot, and I believe they also gave a satisfying conclusion for the Harry Potter franchise. Whether it's some of the characters' relationships, or the fate of the sorcerers in general. Some of my highlights from this movie are Snape's character and Voldemort versus Harry Potter. Snape was always a very strange and mysterious character, hard to decrypt, but this movie revealed where his heart was really at. That whole plot twist about him being a good guy and being in love with Harry's mother is so good and so emotional. I think this was one of the most emotional scenes of the entire franchise for me, and I love how it humanized Snape's character and finally gave concrete answers about his true intentions. Also, the last fight between Harry and Voldemort was incredible. The tension was great, the visuals looked beautiful, and the music was captivating. I think it was a worthy climax for the entire franchise. A moment we've all been waiting for and were not disappointed by. For me, the second half of the movie was the most entertaining one, and I really liked the concept of a big battle in Hogwarts. Sure, some of the main characters' death felt not put on the spotlight enough, but I mean, in the context they were, I think it represents pretty well the impact of a war, which makes you lose your loved ones so fast. So many perished in this fight, which was really sad. But yeah, I'd say it's also true that they could have been put on the spotlight more to make their death more impactful and emotional. And the epilogue, well, it was not mind-blowing, but it was cute and satisfying. It's a great ending, and for some reason, I always get emotional thinking about it. Probably because they used John Williams' music as a farewell. It's such a great image to see these characters we've watched grow up and fight evil since childhood, passing on their story to their child by sending them to Hogwarts just as they have been, in a world where evil was fought off. And so, overall, what did I think of this movie? I think this second part was superior to the first one by far and had a great mix of action and emotions. This movie brings a lot of great plot twists, even if some elements were too vague and confusing. I think this movie is a satisfying conclusion for the Harry Potter saga, and I will give it a rating of 7.5 out of 10. And so, there you go. That was my ranking of the Harry Potter movies, my biggest video yet. This ranking made me realize how great this franchise is. It's obviously not perfect, but once you get into it, you become addicted to it, and you fall in love with its universe, which is what happened to me when I was a kid. And I'm finally happy to have made this ranking for one of my favorite franchises of all time. Remember, this ranking was entirely subjective and based on my watching experience throughout the years. I know that there's a lot of you guys that disagreed with many of my takes, and it's okay, because my opinion isn't necessarily the right one. We all have different takes, and that's what I like about subjectivity. No one's right and no one's wrong. It's all a matter of personal experience. And that's why I want to hear your personal rankings in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to this channel. It really helps small creators like me. Leave a like or a dislike if you want, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. See ya!